After last night's horrifying experience, we all needed to regroup and collect ourselves. We found ourselves back at the church, where we all felt it was a safe place, and I can't tell you how much we all needed to feel safe at the moment. The church's cool, dim sanctuary was a completely different feeling from that of the oppressive energy that clung to the house. I hadn't realized how deeply it had affected me until I stepped through the church's doors and felt the weight lift off my shoulders. We gathered in a small alcove by the altar, where the candles flickered softly, their light casting calm, warm shadows around us. Father Matthews takes a deep breath, his face filled with determination as he looks over each of us. This spirit is stronger than any I've encountered, he admits, his voice low in a quiet space. It's ancient, powerful, and determined to remain there. Mark, who was still visibly shaken, glances over at Emily and then back at Father Matthews. So what do we do? I don't know if any of us can handle another night like that. Father Matthews nods in agreement. You're right. We can't go in unprepared again. This time, we'll need a strategy, a way to weaken it before we attempt another confrontation. He turns to me, his gaze intent. Claire, I know this will be difficult, but I need to know everything you've experienced since you moved in. Even the smallest detail can give us insight. I swallowed hard, memories of the subtle, creeping disturbances flooding back. It started small, flickering lights, cold drafts, strange sounds here and there. But then I began seeing things, hearing whispers that weren't human. I paused, my voice shaking. It was as if something was steadying me, waiting for me to notice it. And when I finally did, it grew bolder. Father Matthews listened, his expression turning somber, absorbing every word. It feeds off attention, he says. The more you notice it, the more it feels it has a right to exist in your space. Emily speaks up, her face pale but resolute. If that's true, maybe we can use that against it. Draw it out intentionally, but in a, controlled way. Father Matthews nods his head. Exactly. We'll need a place it considers safe. Your home has become a vessel for its influence, so it's most likely tied to a specific area or object. The first step is to identify its anchor and separate it from that source. What do you mean? Mark asks. It means, Father Matthews said, choosing his words carefully, that somewhere within the house there's something keeping it trapped. An object, an area, something that holds significance to it. If we can disrupt its hold, maybe we can weaken it. I shift uneasy. But what if we can't find it? What if it's not an object? Father Matthews places a reassuring hand on my shoulder. We'll prepare for that too. If it won't leave willingly, I'll conduct a full exorcism. But first, I'll need to sanctify the house and surround us with protective symbols, holy water and incense. It's a precaution, but it should yield us from its immediate influence. He continues, outlining the steps carefully, detailing each protective measure. Every word he spoke filled me with both hope and dread, a mix of relief that we had a plan and terror that it still might not be enough. Emily leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper. If this fails, if we don't succeed in driving it out, what happens then? Father Matthews looks at her, his eyes heavy with unspoken fear. Then it may become impossible to remove. It would root itself into the house, making it dangerous for anyone who enters. We're fighting not just for Claire's safety, but for the very spirit of the place. Silence settles over us, broken only by the quiet crackle of candlelight. I clench my hands, feeling the fear, but willing myself to push through it. This was my home, and if I was ever going to live in it again, we had to succeed. Father Matthews stands, his face set in determination. Tomorrow, we begin with the blessings. We'll isolate any room that carries a strong energy signature. From there, we'll locate the anchor. He pulls out a small vial of oil and hands it to me. Before dawn, I need you to mark each doorway and window in your home. It's a sacramental oil that will prevent the spirit from passing through. My fingers closed around the vial, its weight solid and reassuring. Father Matthews offers a reassuring nod. Remember, Claire, this spirit's power lies in fear and isolation. Together we're stronger than it is. Tomorrow we'll face it head on. As we left the church, I couldn't help but glance back, feeling the sanctuary's lingering calm. My heart beat with equal parts fear and hope, the path ahead terrifying. This spirit had claimed my home for too long, but tomorrow we would confront it together. The sun was just beginning to rise as I approached my house, clutching the vial of oil Father Matthews gave me. The morning air felt crisp and cold, every shadow casted by the dawn eerily still, as if watching. The house seemed to watch my approach, a silent, watchful presence waiting for me to make the first move. I prepared myself, opening the front door, feeling the familiar chill wrap around me, colder than I'd ever felt it before. I took a deep breath and began my task, marking each doorway and window with the oil, tracing symbols as Father Matthews had instructed. The smell of the oil was sharp and comforting, and I could almost feel it leaving a shield behind, a boundary that the spirit could find difficult to cross. It felt strangely empowering, like I was reclaiming each space within these walls that had held such terror. Father Matthews and the others arrived shortly after, carrying candles, incense, and various other items for the ritual. The air was tense, each of us casting wary glances around, as if the spirit might materialize at any moment. "We'll start in the living room," Father Matthews announces, setting up a small altar on the coffee table. He places the Bible, holy water, and a crucifix there, then lit the candles. The flames flickered, casting uneasy shadows against the walls. Emily and Mark moved to their positions near the doors, holding containers of salt and additional vials of oil. I stay close to Father Matthews, my heart hammering as he begins to recite a low, ancient prayer, the words carrying a weight that fills the room. As the incense begins to smoke, curling into the air, I feel a sudden drop in temperature. It settles in my bones, clawing at me, chilling me from the inside out. And then comes a whisper, a soft, mocking sound, just barely audible, like a breeze moving through a narrow space. Father Matthews raises his voice as he raises the crucifix. "You are not welcomed here. By the authority of light and love, we command you to leave this place." The shadows seem to shift, swirling around the room like a dark mist, gathering strength as the temperature continues to drop. I wrap my arms around myself, trying to stay steady, but the whispering grows louder, now sounding like multiple voices, each one twisting over the other in angry murmurs. "Stay strong, Claire," Father Matthew says, glancing at me. "It's trying to wear us down, to instill fear. Remember, it feeds on your reaction." I nod, clenching my fists as I steel myself against the voices. Emily scatters salt in a careful line along the base of the windows, her hand shaking, but her determination unbroken. Mark follows suit, muttering under his breath as he works, his focus steady. Suddenly, a loud bang echoes from the kitchen. All of us whip around, and I see one of the cabinets hanging open, dishes inside rattling. Then, with a force that made my breath catch, every cabinet door flies open, slamming against the walls repeatedly, filling the room with the sound of wood against plaster. Father Matthews doesn't flinch but continues to chant, his voice raising above the chaos. "This home is a sanctuary. You have no place here." The shadows recoiled slightly, almost as if the words themselves stung, and the cabinet stopped, hanging open in silent defeat. But I could feel the spirit's anger, a seething hatred that seemed to swell and grow, filling the air with a heavy pressure. Father Matthews motioned for me to bring him the oil again. "We'll need to do this in each room, and we'll keep the candles burning as we go. We're pushing it back, step by step." We moved from room to room, marking every door and window, reciting prayers, and sprinkling salt to reinforce our defenses. Each room held its own dark energy, and the deeper we went, the more the spirit fought back. It would shake the walls, flicker the lights, and unleash freezing gusts of air that made it nearly impossible to hold on to the candles. Finally, we reached the master bedroom. I hesitated at the door, memories of sleepless nights and fear flooding back as I stared into the darkened space. This room felt different, as if the spirit had burrowed deeply here, holding onto it with everything it had. Father Matthews gave me a nod, his face firm. "This is where it's rooted itself. This will be our hardest battle." We stepped inside, setting up the altar once more. The second the candles were lit, the entire room seemed to exhale, as if waking from a deep slumber. The shadows gathered again, this time sharper, more defined. forming jagged shapes that twisted along the walls. A low guttural growl echoes from a corner of the room, where the shadows seem thickest. My breath caught as I watched the shape take on a more distinct form, its face obscured, but its eyes were two burning pinpoints filled with anger. Father Matthews began his prayer, louder this time, his voice echoing across the walls. The shadows recoil, shrinking back as if the light from the candles seared them, but it wasn't enough to drive them out entirely. "Bring me the holy water," he calls out, his voice firm. I hand it to him, and he begins sprinkling it over the dark shadows, his words fierce and resolute. The entity lets out a piercing shriek, a sound that claws at my mind, filling my thoughts with a raw, primal terror. It was more than just a sound. It was the spirit's will, its hatred bleeding into the very fabric of the room. My knees buckled, but I steadied myself, clenching my fists and focusing on Father Matthew's voice. "It's weakening," he said, glancing back at me. "Hold on. We're close." The entity lashed out one final time, knocking over the candles, scattering the salt. But as Father Matthews raises his voice again, his words fierce and unwavering, the shadows begin to fade, receding like a tide pulled back from the shore. When the final shadow dissolved, the room grew still. The cold lifted and an eerie silence settled over us, thick with the weight of what we'd just gone through. Father Matthews takes a deep breath, lowering his cross. "It's weakened, but not gone. We'll need one final rite to drive it out completely." I looked around the room, feeling an unfamiliar lightness. For the first time in weeks, I felt hope. The final rite was prepared in silence. The atmosphere was heavy as we get ready for the confrontation ahead. Father Matthew stands in the center of the living room, a ring of candles burning around him, casting sharp shadows across his determined face. The team and I form a circle, each of us holding our breath as he begins the incantation, his voice ringing out clear and powerful, challenging the darkness that had held sway over my home for far too long. The moment the first words left his lips, a sudden pressure filled the air, as if the house itself had taken a sharp breath. The walls shuddered, and the lights flickered, throwing the room into an uneasy half-light. I felt the temperature drop instantly, the chill sinking deep into my skin. And then came the whispers. Only this time, they were no longer just sounds in the distance. They were surrounding us, hissing, growling, their hostility cutting through the room like a knife. Father Matthews lifts the crucifix, his words rising above the whispers. "You are bound by the light, by the authority of those who walk in grace. You have no place here." The shadows gather, slithering across the floor like a living thing. And then, with a force that knocked the breath from my lungs, they struck. An unseen power hurled Mark against the wall, his body hitting it with a sickening thud. Emily cries out, rushing to his side as he struggles to stand, dazed but determined. Father Matthews doesn't flinch. He presses forward, holding the crucifix high as he advances into the shadows. You cannot harm those under the protection of the light. A deep guttural laugh fills the room, the sound bouncing off the walls. Suddenly, a black mist begins to pool in the center of the room, twisting and forming until it takes shape, a grotesque figure with hollow, burning eyes that seem to bear into us with a chilling intelligence. I feel a grip tighten around my throat, suffocating me. I claw at my neck, gasping for air as the figure's shadowed hand stretches towards me, its fingers curling as if to mimic the hold around my neck. Father Matthews quickly throws a handful of salt in my direction, and the grip breaks, leaving me coughing and trembling. "Stay strong," Father Matthews says, his voice unwavering. "It wants you to break. Resist it." The entity's form flickers, growing darker, more solid. It looms over Father Matthews, a towering presence radiating anger, and then it lashes out, its shadowy arm swinging toward him with a force that sends him stumbling back. His crucifix falls from his hand, skidding across the floor, and for a heart-stopping second, he is defenseless. Emily reacts quickly, tossing him a vial of holy water. Father Matthews catches it and throws it directly at the entity. The liquid steams as it splashes over the figure, its outline twisting as it recoils. A horrific, inhuman scream tears through the room. But the entity wasn't retreating. It gathered itself, becoming denser, the air around it sparking with an unnatural energy. It lunges towards Father Matthews again, striking him square in the chest and knocking him to the ground. I run to his side, helping him up as he whispers a prayer, his breath labored. "I can't do this alone," he gasps. "We need all of our strength." Mark, his face set with grim determination, picks up the crucifix. "Then let's finish this." We all join hands, forming a tight circle, each of us chanting the rite in unison. The entity roared, thrashing against our combined will. Its dark form fights to break free. It strikes out at us, the force of its rage like a shock wave that leaves us struggling to stay upright. I felt a burning sensation across my skin, as if claws were raking down my arms, but I held tight, clenching my jaw against the pain. The figure begins to falter, its shape flickering. Father Matthews, his voice hoarse but filled with conviction, holds out his hand. "In the name of all that is holy, I banish you from this place." A final ear-piercing scream rips through the room, filling every corner with an intense, violent energy that shatters remaining light bulbs and leaves us in near total darkness. The shadows lash out one last time, a violent spasm of fury and desperation, and then, as if an unseen wind sweeps through, they dissipate, leaving nothing but silence. We stand there, breathless, our hands still clasped as we take in the stillness, the sudden absence of that oppressive presence. I release the shuddering breath, my body trembling, but an overwhelming relief comes over me. Father Matthews, his face lined with exhaustion, smiles faintly. "It's over, Claire. Your home is finally free." The others hug me, each of us sharing in the bittersweet relief. My house felt different now, lighter, as if it was truly mine for the first time since I moved in. As I look around the room, seeing it with fresh eyes, I felt a calm I hadn't known for what felt like a lifetime. The battle had been long, terrifying, but in the end we had won. My dream home had finally become my sanctuary. It's been a week since we drove the entity from my home, and each day feels like I'm slowly rediscovering this place, reclaiming it piece by piece. I never thought the walls and rooms could carry so much weight, so many scars, but now I find comfort here, even in the stillness that once terrified me. I spend my mornings in the living room, watching the sunlight stream through the windows, feeling the warmth fill every corner of the room. The air is lighter now, the shadows just shadows, no longer hiding or waiting. There are times when I half expect to feel that chill or hear those voices, but there's only quiet now, a calmness that lets me relax. Father Matthews checks in on me now and then, reminding me that facing the unknown is one of the hardest things a person can do. He told me that I found the strength in myself that not many people get to know. He's right. I went through something that I wouldn't wish on anyone, yet I came out on the other side feeling different, stronger, grounded. I've kept a few of the items he left me, a vial of holy water, a small cross, and even the last candle we used that night. They're just objects, but they remind me that darkness doesn't have the final say. It's our courage, our resilience, and the people who stand beside us that really have the power. My dream home feels like a home again. I never would have imagined I'd go through something so terrifying. But in the end, it taught me that we are all a little stronger than we think. And now, as I look around at the familiar walls, I know they're mine. Finally, they're mine. Hey guys, I want to thank you for listening in. If you enjoyed today's story, be sure to let me know down below in the comments. Let me know what you think about the story and its characters, as I really, really enjoy writing about them. I try to capture the emotions and fear that they feel in the moment and make you take part in that feeling as well. Tell me what you would do in Claire's situation. I'm curious to know about that. Thanks a bunch, and I'll see you in the next one.